The day my daughter-in-law told me I wasn't welcome at my own son's Christmas table, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I smiled, walked to my car, and drove home. And that night, sitting at my kitchen table with 5 years of bank statements spread under the lamplight, I finally did the one thing I had been too afraid to do for too long. I added everything up. What I found didn't break me. It woke me. My name is Rosa Mendez. I'm 63 years old. I taught high school literature for 31 years. I raised my son alone after my husband Ernesto passed. I have a master's degree, a paid-off car, and a bird feeder I hung last month that brings me more joy than anything I paid for in the last 5 years. I am not a naive woman. I'm a woman who loved deeply and trusted slowly, except when it came to my own child. With him, I had no walls. That's not weakness. That's motherhood. But somewhere in the last 5 years, someone mistook my love for a line of credit with no repayment terms. This is the story of how I closed that account. The dinner I wasn't invited to it was a Tuesday evening in December when Marco said it. I had driven 40 minutes across Tucson to bring him tamales. The pork ones with green chili, his father's recipe. The one Ernesto had memorized before he memorized anything else about our family. I didn't call ahead. I never had to. That was the kind of relationship I thought we had. The house smelled like Valentina's store-bought candles, cedar and something synthetic trying to be citrus. The Christmas tree was 12 feet tall and carried no memories, no paper ornaments Marco had made in second grade, no ceramic angel from our first apartment, nothing with a story. Every decoration had been chosen for aesthetics. Everything in that house had been chosen for aesthetics. I had helped pay for most of it. Marco was on the sectional, the one I'd helped pick out when Valentina said their old couch didn't fit the vision for the space, and he was doing the thing men do when they've rehearsed something and are hoping the rehearsal carries them through. Shifting, not quite looking at you, building up to it. "Mom," he said, "Valentina's family is flying in for Christmas. Her parents, her aunt, her cousin from Phoenix." I waited. "They have a certain way they like to celebrate, very private, traditional." A pause. "They'd be more comfortable if you came another time. For Christmas dinner, specifically." I looked at my son. I looked at the pendant lights above the kitchen island, the ones I'd bought because Valentina said the originals were builder grade. I looked at the KitchenAid mixer still in its box on the counter. I looked at the hardwood floors I had funded, the crown molding, the granite countertops, the kitchen renovation Valentina had called non-negotiable. I thought about all of it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I stood up, kept my back straight, and said, "Tell Valentina's family Feliz Navidad," and I walked out. I sat in my car without starting the engine for a long time. The neighborhood Christmas lights blinked at me from every direction. My phone buzzed Marco, and I watched his name light up and go dark. Then I drove home and did something I had been avoiding for 5 years. I sat at my kitchen table, pulled out my filing cabinet, and started counting. Before I tell you what I found, I want to hear from you. Have you ever given and given to someone, and it took one moment, one sentence, to make you finally see the full picture? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. The number that changed everything. I want to be clear about something. I did not keep records because I expected repayment. I kept records because I am a teacher, and teachers document things. Every receipt, every transfer confirmation, Every text from Valentina that started with "Rosa, quick question," and ended with my account number being used. I had them all in a manila folder I hadn't opened in 2 years. That night, I opened it. I also pulled up 5 years of bank statements. The automatic $1,800 monthly transfer, which had quietly become $2,800 in year 3, showed up every single month like a standing appointment neither of us ever discussed canceling. I got out my calculator. I started writing. Year 1, $1,800 monthly toward their mortgage, plus $22,000 for Valentina's kitchen renovation, the granite countertops, the custom cabinetry, the undermount sink she'd found on Pinterest and presented to me like a business proposal. Year 2, same monthly amount, plus $14,000 for a new roof because their home inspector had flagged it and they'd called me before they called a second contractor for a second opinion. I had encouraged them to get that second opinion. They had not. Year 3, this is the one that still makes me go quiet. I refinanced my own house, the house Ernesto and I bought together, the house where Marco took his first steps, the house where we watched his father die slowly and with tremendous grace. I put that house on the line because Valentina had hidden a $45,000 down payment shortfall from Marco until the week of closing. I found this out when Marco called me in a panic. I didn't ask questions. I just helped. I have thought about that decision many times since. Year 4, property taxes, $9,800. Valentina's boutique had another difficult quarter. Every quarter was a difficult quarter. The solution to every difficult quarter was the same. Year 5, I had been eating lunch at home, buying store-brand groceries, skipping my dental cleanings twice, telling myself this is what mothers do, telling myself Ernesto would have done the same, telling myself a lot of things that let me avoid doing this math. I finished the column. Mortgage contributions, $108,000. Kitchen renovation, $22,000. Roof, $14,000. Down payment, $45,000. Property taxes, $9,800. Appliances, furniture, miscellaneous transfers, $11,400. Total, $210,200. $200 and $10,000. More than Ernesto's entire life insurance payout. More than my retirement account. More than I had spent on myself in the previous decade combined. And I had spent almost nothing on myself in the previous decade. I sat with that number for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called the bank. The woman on the line was kind and efficient. The cancellation took 4 minutes. When she asked if there was anything else she could help me with, I said, "No, that's everything," and meant it more completely than I'd meant anything in years. I did not feel angry. I felt clear. The way a room feels after you've finally opened the windows. That number, $210,200, did you think it would be that high? A lot of people reading this have their own version of this story. The amounts are different, but the pattern is the same. Tell me in the comments, at what point would you have stopped? I genuinely want to know. The ask I didn't answer the morning after I canceled the transfer, Valentina called at 10:15. I recognized the tone before she finished her first sentence, warm at the surface, purposeful underneath. The voice she used when she needed something and had already decided the answer was yes. Rosa, I need a small favor. My parents land at Tucson International at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Marco has a work thing and Gerardo is in back-to-back meetings. Would you mind picking them up? They know you from photos. I looked out my kitchen window at the bird feeder I'd finally hung last month. 2 house finches were fighting over the same perch. What terminal? I asked. Terminal A, American Airlines, 2 o'clock sharp. A brief pause, then her voice dropped half a register into what I think she believed was warmth. Oh, and Rosa, my mother can be a little self-conscious around Spanish. She doesn't speak it, so if you could keep things in English, it would just make everyone more comfortable. I am a woman born in Sonora who has spoken Spanish every single day of 63 years. I have a master's degree in literature. I taught the language's poetry to teenagers who didn't want to listen, and most of them came around. Of course, I said. I'll take care of everything. She hung up. She did not say thank you. In 5 years, she rarely did. I had stopped noticing. Now I noticed. I finished my coffee. Read the arts section of the paper. Watered my plants, they are thriving. And at 2:15 that afternoon, I was sitting in my backyard in the December sun, reading a novel I had purchased 6 months ago and never had time for because all my available time had been going somewhere else. My phone rang 8 times between 2 and 4 o'clock. I turned it face down after the third call and kept reading. The protagonist of my novel was also a woman who had spent too long making herself convenient for people who never once returned the courtesy. I was deeply invested in her ending. I want to be honest here. I know some people will say I should have just told Valentina no directly. That going quiet was passive-aggressive. That a stronger woman would have made the call. Maybe. But I had been making calls and sending transfers and showing up for 5 years without once being met halfway. Sometimes silence is the only language people actually hear. I'm curious. Be honest in the comments. Do you think Rosa should have called and said no directly, or was going quiet the right move? There's no wrong answer here. I want to hear where you land on this. Nochebuena, the pounding started at 5:47. Not knocking, pounding. The kind that belongs on a different kind of door in a different kind of situation. Not on the front door of a retired schoolteacher's home on a quiet December evening. I walked to it without hurrying. This was my house. I had stopped hurrying for people who never once hurried for me. Through the peephole, Valentina, her composure significantly dismantled, and beside her, 2 people I recognized from her Instagram. Her parents, Rodrigo and Consuelo Vasquez, both wearing the specific expression of people who have been inconvenienced for the first time and have taken it as a personal attack. I opened the door. Rodrigo came in without being invited, the walk of a man who has never considered that an invitation might not be forthcoming. 3 hours, he said. His voice filled my living room like he was addressing a boardroom. We sat in those chairs for 3 hours. I didn't respond. Consuelo followed, her eyes doing a slow inventory of my home with the practiced assessment of someone who prices things before she respects them. Valentina came last. You didn't answer a single call, Rosa. Do you understand how embarrassing this was? My parents had to take a rideshare. I know, I said. Something in my tone, unhurried, unashamed, completely unbothered, stopped all 3 of them. It's a specific kind of quiet that people who are used to getting reactions don't know how to respond to, because the reaction is the whole point, and without it, they have nothing. 2 days ago, I said, you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would make your family uncomfortable. This morning, you asked me to be their driver. I decided both things couldn't be true simultaneously, so I chose the one that made sense. Rodrigo's face moved through several expressions. You have no idea who I am or what kind of connections I have in this city. I can make your life very difficult. I looked at him. Then I'll know to expect it, I said, and I held the door open. They left. I made dinner. I slept well. 3 days later, I opened the Tucson Courier and found a small piece on page 4: retired teacher leaves visitors stranded at airport during holiday week. There was a quote from Rodrigo describing himself as a Sonora business leader who had been abandoned in an unfamiliar city. The weather that day had been 71 degrees and clear. The airport is 12 minutes from my house. They had waited in air conditioning. I read the article carefully. I made notes in the margins. And I spent the following week doing something I had been doing my entire professional life. I gathered my sources. This is the part where a lot of people tell me I should have let it go, moved on, taken the high road. I want to hear from you when someone publicly misrepresents you after everything you've given. Do you let it go or do you respond? Tell me in the comments. This is a real question and I think about it a lot. The documents, I want to be precise about what I brought to that Christmas Eve dinner, because precision matters and I am a precise woman. I brought documentation. Not to be dramatic, I am not a dramatic person, but because a public record had been created about my character, and I had the right to correct it with facts. I had 12 packets, one for each person who would be at that table. Each packet contained 5 years of bank statements with the relevant transfers highlighted, receipts organized by category and year, and screenshots of Valentina's Instagram posts featuring purchases I had funded, each one captioned with the date and my corresponding bank withdrawal. Obsessed with our space, posted November 14th, 3 weeks after I transferred $22,000. Finally got the kitchen of my dreams, posted April 3rd. The dreams had cost me $14,000 and a refinanced house. Home is everything, posted December 1st of this year. The home had been funded, in significant part, by a woman who had just been told she wasn't welcome at its Christmas table. I drove to their neighborhood at 7:15 on Christmas Eve in my burgundy blazer and Ernesto's pearl earrings, the ones he gave me on our 20th anniversary, and I save for moments that require me to feel like myself. I knocked on the front door. I waited to be let in. Valentina opened it. She looked at my briefcase. Her expression shifted. "Rosa, I'll be brief," I said. The room was full, 18 people, the table set beautifully, candles lit, wine poured. I walked to the nearest end and set a packet beside the first plate. Then the next. Then the next. No one spoke. When people don't understand what's happening, they tend to go quiet until they do. "There was an article in the Courier this week," I said, keeping my voice even and my pace slow. "It contained some inaccuracies. I wanted anyone who may have read it to have access to the correct information. Every number in these packets corresponds to a bank statement. I was a math teacher for 9 of my 31 years. I am thorough. A woman in a green dress, one of Valentina's cousins, I'd later learn, picked up the packet and started reading. Across the table, Rodrigo stood. His wife put her hand on his arm. Rodrigo sat back down. No one said anything for a long moment. Then Marco looked up from the documents in front of him. In 35 years, I have watched my son's face move through every emotion a person can have. I know that face the way I know my own handwriting. What I saw in it at that moment was not anger, not embarrassment. It was the particular stillness of someone confronting something they have been avoiding and finding it larger than they expected. "Mom," he said quietly. "Enjoy your dinner," I said. "Feliz Navidad." I closed my briefcase, straightened my blazer, and walked out through the front door. Behind me, voices rising, questions being asked, the particular sound of a version of events that had seemed solid suddenly needing to be renegotiated. I drove home with the windows cracked, the December air cold and dry and clean. I stopped at a cafe I like and ordered a hot chocolate, the real kind, made with Mexican chocolate and a little cinnamon. I sat at a table by the window and looked out at the street and thought about Ernesto, the way I do on significant evenings. He was a quiet man who made good decisions slowly. I think he would have done what I did. I think he would have waited longer than I did, but he would have done it. I know some of you are sitting with this. Some of you think Rosa went too far. Some of you think she didn't go far enough. Some of you are doing your own math right now in your head about your own life. Whatever you're thinking, I want to hear it. Leave it in the comments. Seriously, these conversations matter to me. What came after I am going to tell you the ending honestly, because I think you deserve that. Things did not resolve cleanly. Life rarely does. Valentina's cousin, the woman in the green dress, called me 2 weeks later. Her name was Patricia, and she had done her own research after that evening. She told me she had been uncomfortable for some time with certain things she had observed in her cousin's home but had not known how to name them. We spoke for an hour and a half. She is a thoughtful person. We have had coffee twice since. Rodrigo did not, as it turned out, have the connections he implied. No further action came from his threat. I had expected this. Men who announce their power rarely have as much of it as they'd like you to believe. The courier ran a brief follow-up 3 weeks later, just a correction, tucked in the letters section, noting that some details in the original piece had been submitted by a private source and could not be independently verified. It was small. It was enough. Marco came to my door on a Sunday morning in late February. He knocked properly, not pounded, knocked, and waited on the step holding a paper bag from the panaderia we've been going to since he was 7. He looked like his father around the eyes. He always has. I opened the door and stepped back to let him in. We sat at my kitchen table for 3 hours. We did not resolve everything. You do not resolve 5 years in one morning, and I am too old to pretend otherwise. But we were honest with each other in ways we hadn't been in a very long time. He told me things I hadn't known. I told him things I had never said out loud. He cried at one point, which he hadn't done in front of me since his father's funeral. I am not going to tell you what we decided, because some things belong to families and not to stories. What I will tell you is that I made him tamales before he left, not as a peace offering, but because he is my son and tamales are what we do, and that when he walked out to his car, he turned around and looked at me the way he used to when he was small. I am figuring out how much of this is repairable. He is figuring out what he owes, not to me, but to himself, and to the kind of person he wants to be. Valentina and I have not spoken. I don't know if we will. What I know is this. I have not skipped the dentist twice in 1 year since 1987, and I am not planning to start again. I went in January. I am buying the name brand groceries. I rehung the bird feeder in a better spot, and now I can see it from my reading chair. I'm reading a lot. I have the time. Here's what I want to leave you with, and I mean this as a real question, not a rhetorical one. What's the thing you've been funding in your life, financially, emotionally, with your time, that you haven't let yourself look at directly yet? You don't have to answer that publicly. But if you want to, the comments are here. I'll be reading. And if this story stayed with you, if you saw yourself anywhere in it, in Rosa or in Marco, or maybe even somewhere you're not proud of, share it with someone who needs to hear it. That's the only reason I told it.